Hi everyone, welcome back to day 16 of my 30 days of JavaScript LeetCode challenge. Today's problem is promise time limit. We are going to wrap an async function so that it either finishes in time or we force it to fail with a time limit error. So let's see what question says. An asynchronous function fn, a time limit t in milestone is given. We have to return a new function that behaves like fn but with a time limit. The rules are: fn finishes within t milliseconds. We should resolve with the normal result. If fn takes longer than t milliseconds, we should reject with the string time limit exceeded. So basically we are creating a wrapper around fn that says you must finish before t milliseconds, otherwise I will time you out. So let's see the example. There are in total 4 examples. So example number 1 says no matter what n is, this function always waits 100 milliseconds before returning. Here t equals to 50. That means we only give fn 50 milliseconds to finish, but fn needs 100 milliseconds. So let's see how the timeline acts. At 0 milliseconds, we call the time limited function. The original fn starts and sets up a 100 milliseconds delay. At 50 milliseconds, our time limit is reached, but fn has not finished yet. So now our wrapper must reject with time limit exceeded at around 50 milliseconds. The actual fn might still finish internally at 100 milliseconds, but we no longer care. We already rejected it. That's why the output is rejected result with time limit exceeded and time around 50. Example 2 says the same function which waits 100 milliseconds and then returns n into n, but now time equals to 150. Let's see the timeline. At 0 milliseconds, we call the time limit function. fn starts returning and waits 100 milliseconds. At around 100 milliseconds, fn completes and returns 25 because 5 into 5 is equals to 25. So the time limit is 150 now. So we never hit the timeout first. In this case, the function wins the race and we get a resolved value of 25 at about 100 milliseconds. In example number 3, it awaits of 120 milliseconds and then results a plus b. The time limit t is 150. Now let's see the timeline, how it acts. At 0 milliseconds, we call the time limited version. At 120 milliseconds, fn finishes and returns 5 plus 10 is 15. The limit is 150 milliseconds. So again the time limit is never reached first. So we resolve with 115 at around 120 milliseconds. And in example number 4, the function throws immediately as soon as it called. Let's see the timeline. At 0 milliseconds, we call the time limited version. fn throws right away and returns a rejected promise and with error. That happens before any delay. So the time is effectively 0 milliseconds. Because fn itself fails first, we just pass that error through, so the result is a rejection with error and time 0. Now let's think about how to implement this. We want to race between two things: the original async function, a timer and the rejection message, the time limit exceeded. JavaScript has something perfect for this. Promise.race function. Promise.race function returns whichever promise settles first. So we can start a function as functionPromise, create a timeout promise that does setTimeout and then rejects after t milliseconds. Use promise.race function promise timeout promise. If fn finishes first, we get it result. If the timer finishes first, we get time limit exceeded. Let's see the code now. Here we define time limit. It receives the original function fn and the time limit t in milliseconds. And in line number 2, we return a new async function. This is the time limited version of fn. It can take any number of arguments using the rest operator. And here we created timeout promise. We ignore the resolve argument and only use reject. Set timeout waits t milliseconds and then calls reject with message time limit exceeded. So if this promise wins the race, our whole function will reject with that message. And in line number 7, this line calls the original async function with all the arguments. It returns a promise. We store it as functionPromise. And in the last round, the returns promise.race of functionPromise and timeoutPromise. This exactly matches the behavior the problem wants. And at the last, it is the end of the end of the function and the end of time limit implementation. And that wraps up the promise time limit problem. We learned how to raise an async function against a timeout using promise.race, which is super useful in real world projects when you don't want to wait forever for some operations. If you found this helpful, make sure to like the video, drop a comment and subscribe for more JavaScript LeetCode problems. I will see you in the next video. Thank you everyone.